It's a rough start out there for some folks with severe weather rolling through and heavy snow falling down. We're going to take a look at that, the severe weather that extends through the weekend. We'll have a look at your Easter forecast, look at the long range, and a special edition of Today in Weather History where we feature an important and famous U.S. natural disaster. So you're not going to want to miss that. So stick around. A brand new action-packed of Cold Rain's Weather World is rolling at you right now. Happy Good Friday to you folks. Hope your morning has started off well. Some of you are experiencing some rough weather this morning, so I hope you made it out the door safe and sound. But you are here for another edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. I'm Jason Pritchard, your host. We have the fastest growing new weather show on the internet, so thank you for joining us today. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like if you like the content. Leave a comment in the comment section. If there's anything I can pray over for you, I'm happy to do that. I want to walk alongside of you as you go through your journey. If there's something that I can help you with in that regard, I'm happy to do that. Leave a suggestion for the show, a comment about the show. We do a few things different here. We give you your weather. I'm going to go through here in a minute, talk about the weather that's going on today out there this morning, how we're going to evolve over the course of the day. There's a severe weather threat that continues through the weekend. We're going to look at that, a flooding threat as well. So we're going to get into all of those things. Plus, we're going to take a look at the longer range. And we've got a special edition of This Day in Weather History featuring an important natural disaster, one that's famous, and you probably remember about it. You studied it in school, I'm sure. We're going to take a quick look at that, but we're going to get started with today's Weather IQ. We always promise to leave you smarter than when you came. And yesterday we looked at lightning. We talked about the most common form of lightning. Do you remember what that was? I hope you remember that. The most common form of lightning is cloud-to-cloud lightning, sometimes called in-cloud lightning. But today we're going to look at a new twist on that same question. What is the rarest type of lightning? Okay, cloud-to-ground lightning, heat lightning, ball lightning, or sheet lightning. If you know the answer to this question, type it in the comment section. If you do not know the answer, then just hang on a little bit and we'll get to it at the end of the show. As I said, it's an active weather morning out there for some of you, with some folks seeing severe weather, other folks seeing snow, and some people seeing heavy rain, other people seeing sunny skies. And so we're going to take a look at who's seeing what as we take a look at our surface map here. And we see right off the bat this big low pressure in Iowa with a warm front extending through the southern Great Lakes, cold front extending back into North Texas and connecting to another little wave of low pressure in Colorado that's actually sparking some snow back here in Wyoming and Colorado, particularly in the higher peaks this morning. Snow levels will continue to fall, and places like Denver, you all are going to get into the snow, maybe see a couple of inches of snow there. And then we've got severe weather out ahead of this front where there's warm, moist, unstable air, and that's going to increase through the day in this yellow area here. And even behind this yellow area, you can't really see it all that well, but there's a flooding threat where some of these storms are going to train over time, and just general thunderstorm activity beyond that. Looking at the satellite imagery, you can see clouds associated with let's get on a better display here. You can see clouds associated with the snow I talked about here in the Wyoming, Colorado region, the Rocky Mountains, and you can see clouds streaming up into Texas. There'll be a partly cloudy day here. This big cluster of blow up of thunderstorms here in Wyoming, in Wisconsin shows up really well. A lot of times you can see when you look at these satellite pictures, you see kind of wispy areas of the clouds or little clusters or filaments to the clouds. But when you get these big anvil type cirrus clouds blowing off thunderstorms, they show up really well, and they're kind of a uniform color, and they kind of explode up, and that's how you can kind of tell thunderstorms are developing and moving here on the satellite imagery. So we see that here show up really well. Radar imagery across the states, we're looking at snow back here in Wyoming, in Cheyenne, close to Denver now. It's going to be a chilly day out here in the Rocky Mountains, in the foothills, into the plains, and we're going to be looking at some snow falling in some of these areas. And over here in Wisconsin, we've really got under the gun this morning with severe weather. Rolling in here, we can take a look. We've seen 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts with these storms, hail in excess of 2 inches. It's been a rocky, rough morning. Everything's moving through Madison, moving toward Milwaukee. This is a future radar now, and it'll eventually move out into the Great Lakes into Michigan here, and we're going to see plenty of instability to continue these showers and thunderstorms this morning. That'll eventually die out over the course of the day, and these will weaken, of course. We've got a severe thunderstorm watch up until 11 a.m. local time. Our hazards map, we're looking at red flag warnings down in New Mexico and Texas for gusty winds up into the 50s and 60s potentially. And it's very dry here, so don't burn anything out here. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories are up through the Rockies with potential for up to 12 inches of snow in some of the higher elevations. As I said, Colorado, so around Denver, you guys could pick up, 2, 3, 4 inches of snow potentially over the course of the next 24 hours. So watch out here, slick spots. If you're traveling here, be careful, slow it down a little bit. And then we've got flash flood watches from Tulsa up just south of Kansas City up through St. Louis into Hillsboro, Illinois. And so this is through the weekend, and we're going to see training of thunderstorms here. We can see several inches of rain fall, and we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. Now, looking at yesterday, we saw several severe thunderstorm reports. Yesterday, I think we had around 100, it says right here, 160 total reports with 16 tornado sightings. So we had some observations of actual tornadoes, which is a little, there was tornadoes in the potential for tornadoes yesterday, but the cloud bases were rather high, which makes it a little bit more difficult to get tornadoes to come all the way to the ground. And so, but we did see reports of that. The big story was wind back in Nebraska, though, and 80-mile-per-hour winds at that. There were a couple of thunderstorms that produced those gusts, and we saw hail up to softball size in Iowa, too, 4-inch hail. That's incredible. And so we're going to see more reports of this kind of weather over the next few days. The Storm Prediction Center has a large area of slight risk from essentially just south of Madison into near Indianapolis, all the way back through Chicago, Springfield, near Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, back in toward Abilene. And so we're going to see potential for tornadoes down here in Oklahoma, 5% wind through the whole entire area, and then hail concentrated back into Texas and Oklahoma. As this cold front sort of settles in today, there's a cap in the atmosphere, and as that cap begins to break, we're going to see enough wind shear, particularly in the southern sections of this area, to really create some supercells that will maximize the hail threat and the tornado threat. Even though there's not a great risk of tornadoes, you could see a couple. Up in the northern areas of this line, the wind shear is not quite as strong, but there's still enough instability in wind shear to produce severe weather. So that's why we've got this entire area highlighted. But pay attention, especially later this evening in Oklahoma and Texas. Tomorrow, the threat continues in the southern areas while the front sags south in the northern areas. A little less wind shear up here, a little less instability, a little more uncertainty about the severe weather threat. So the slight risk has been trimmed back to a marginal risk. So there could still be some severe weather reports. 5% here for tornadoes in Texas, centered there, wind, and then hail being the predominant threat as well. So we could see more baseball to softball size hail in some of these areas here. And then everything kind of culminates around Missouri, Arkansas, northern Louisiana, east, northeast Texas as we get into Easter Sunday. Could be a rough ride. Now there's some question marks exactly where the most favorable place for the severe weather will be. The Europeans a little farther south, and the GFS suite, which is a little bit farther north. And so we're going to pay attention to that through the weekend, but everything kind of culminates on Sunday. This trough that I'm going to show you in a minute, the base of this trough is going to essentially move out, and the upper level feature is going to turn negative, and that's going to enhance the severe weather threat. So I think we may see this area get upgraded as we go through the weekend. We're going to watch that closely, but pay attention here. The flooding threat's going to be in sort of the same area as well. Looking at the upper level wind energy, you can kind of see this. I've shown you this last couple of days, so we're not going to belabor the point here, but the jet stream is kind of flowing out of Canada through putting a trough in the western part of the country and a broad ridge in the east, and that just southwesterly flow along this jet stream brings in moisture and warm temperatures from the south. And as we put this into motion, you can see how the colors, which are just the mid-level, this is a mid-level flow, this mid-level, these mid-level jet streaks just sort of flow around the base of this trough up out of the southwest and move it out. So this afternoon, we're looking at plenty of deep moisture being transported north in this flow. This trough sort of sits in place. The southern end of it doesn't move all that much. The northern part kind of sags to the southeast, as you can see that right there. This is Saturday afternoon. We get into Saturday and overnight hours, and look what happens out here. As we get into Sunday morning, this area out here in the New Mexico area, we're starting to get a contour now, a closed low contour, and we're starting to see this trough turn negative. That's back, from the southeast to the northwest. It allows more moisture flow out of the south. It allows greater divergence aloft and more lift and just more dynamism into the atmosphere. And so that would enhance the severe threat in some of these areas that were highlighted on Sunday. So as you see, I put this into motion for Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. Nice little intense jet streak here that will also enhance the wind shear in the atmosphere. So I'm kind of concerned about how that's shaking up for some of these areas of Arkansas and Missouri as we get into Sunday afternoon and evening. And then eventually this low moves up into the Great Lakes, drags a cold front through, thunderstorms coalesce along that cold front. You get kind of a squall line and wind threat picks up as you get into Sunday afternoon. So that's how all that plays out. Looking at what the lightning display, this is where the intense thunderstorms are. You can see that this morning, thunderstorms moving through Wisconsin. As we get into the afternoon, that front really starts to light up, particularly down here in Oklahoma and Texas where the main threat exists. We'll see supercells develop, coalescing into line segments and clusters and things like that as we go through the evening hours. This is overnight approaching tomorrow morning. Those cells kind of train in the same areas, which increases the flooding threat. And you can see that continue tomorrow afternoon into the evening hours, predominantly down here in the southern end of that front where we saw the slight risk. That's where our focus is going to be for large hail, wind damage potentially, and then that organizes into the evening hours, fades out a little bit in some of these areas as we get into Sunday morning. Texas, it finally starts to fade as we get into the early morning hours on Sunday, and you can see it kind of diminishes. Then Sunday afternoon, look what happens. We get another explosion over Missouri and Arkansas. We get a kind of a coalescing in the of the nature of the thunderstorms into a line, sort of line segments. And everything from that point, Sunday afternoon into the overnight hours, will begin to push off to the east and diminish, ending the severe weather threat, ending the continual rain and flooding threat, although some of the river flooding will occur after the storm moves out. So that is your severe weather outlook. We're going to look at the flooding threat. We're going to take a quick look at the snow and the long range pattern. But before we do that, we're going to take a look back at this day in history at a natural disaster that occurred on the West Coast. So this day in weather history is an interesting one. If you're a natural disaster and weather buff like me, you already know about this, or you may have just learned about it in school. But in 1906, a magnitude 8.3 earthquake struck the city of San Francisco, creating one of the most devastating U.S. natural disasters. This is one of the great U.S. disasters, and it happened in 1906 on April the 18th. The quake and subsequent fires destroyed most of the city and created a situation where hundreds of thousands of people were left homeless. 3,000 people died, and a fire burned through the Mission District and burned a lot of that area too. So they dealt with the quake and then the fires, and the buildings weren't nearly as safe as the buildings are today out there. And even so, an 8.3 would still be destructive today, but back then it was completely devastating. So that was one of the great U.S. natural disasters, and since it occurred today, many years ago, I wanted to share that with you. If you recall, if you're old enough, you may have been watching the World Series in 1989, and another earthquake struck the San Francisco area. I believe that was like a 6.3 or 6.9. I think it was a 6.9. The 1906 one was a depth of 7 miles, and the 6.9 in 1989 was a depth of around 11 miles, I think. So Anyway, that makes a difference too. The more shallow the earthquake is, and the bigger it is, the more you're going to feel it, right? So, and the more devastation it's going to do. So, anyway, that was interesting. I wanted to share that with you. And we're going to wrap up our video taking a look at the snow threat and the long range threat and the temperatures over the next few days, and just get you up to speed on what you can expect through the weekend and out into next week. Looking at the probabilities of 1 inch or more of snow, very, very high. These red colors are almost 100%, like 90 to 100%. So from Wyoming all the way down through Colorado, including Denver, Boulder, and those places down into northern New Mexico and northeast Arizona, you can see 1 inch or more of snow fairly easily. 3 inches, we go to 3 inches, and that decreases a little bit, centered mostly over Colorado. We go to 6 inches, and that decreases even further. So higher elevations, you're going to see the most snow, of course, but it's April the 18th, and we're still seeing significant snow out here in the Rockies and foothills. And so winter, I guess, is not decided not to leave just yet, but maybe this is the last one. If we take a look here at the surface map over the next few days, starting Monday morning, that low pressure we've been tracking all weekend is finally moving up to the Great Lakes. Line of showers down south of that. As we go into Tuesday morning, little bit of leftover shower activity along that front. So much of the southeast is going to get through the weekend dry, and so it's going to be a nice Easter weekend for you all. And then we get some showers moving through the northeast on Tuesday, next Wednesday. Just general areas of activity, nothing really all that organized. You can kind of see there'll be little waves in the mid levels of the atmosphere moving through some wind energy aloft. And so that'll spark off showers and thunderstorms. Not until we get into next weekend could we start to see some more organization around some of this, the way it looks right now. And so kind of active, and our same areas that saw the severe weather this weekend will kind of be in the same bullseye for any activity. Unfortunately, along the East Coast, we're not looking at a lot of rain. Along the West Coast, we're kind of looking at dry conditions there too as we go through the next 6 to 10 days, couple of weeks, and then it kind of gets murky beyond that. Looking at the excessive rain threat, let me go here to a different display. So this afternoon, day one, we're seeing a slight risk from essentially Tulsa up through just near St. Louis. That's where our excessive rain threat looks to be with training of cells. We get a moderate risk over much of those same areas, surrounded by a slight risk that's a little bit bigger, and a marginal risk around that as we head into Saturday. Same areas see a slight risk on Sunday, and then we're kind of out of the woods as we get into Monday and Tuesday. We see a little bit more potential as we get into Tuesday. Looking at our total rainfall over the next 7 days, large area of 6 to 7 inches, and then a little bit of a greater threat of 7 inches down here in central Oklahoma. So pay attention, be careful in these areas. If you receive a flood warning, know what to do, have a plan for it, get to higher ground. Pay attention through the weekend, particularly on Sunday, as a lot of Easter things will be going on and people will be celebrating and may be a little bit distracted. But I don't want you distracted. I want you paying attention this weekend. Could see a number of hazards develop through the course of the weekend. Temperature anomalies starting Monday. Look at this. Warmer than average along the East Coast, a little bit cooler where there's clouds and some showers ongoing, and a little push of cool air behind that system, but it's brief. And as we get on into Tuesday and Wednesday, a shot of chilly air up in the northeast, but nothing too out of the ordinary along the northern tier. Warmer than normal across much of the rest of the country, centered over the south and southeast. And then as we get on out toward next weekend, much of the country turns above normal. So we're going to see all of that kind of play out that way. Looking at our temperatures this afternoon, 80s all the way up into the Great Lakes from West Texas into the Great Lakes. Northern portions are right up here around the mid-Atlantic, 60s and 70s above that. Cold out in the Rocky Mountains, and then warm along the West Coast. Tonight, we're looking at temperatures very cold out here in the Rockies. Look at this, teens and 20s out here for much of the upper plains and into the mountains and intermountain west. Cool along the West Coast, not too anything to be concerned about. Chilly up north. 50s down the East Coast, with a band of 60s ahead of that front, all the way from Texas up into Cleveland. And then looking at tomorrow, Let's go into Saturday. Take a look at Saturday highs. Very warm from Texas again, all the way up into southern New England, 80s. Chilly behind the front, 50s and 60s, and then still cool in the Rocky Mountains. Warming up in the San Joaquin Valley, up into the 80s out there, but very nice for much of the southeast. Look at this, 87 out here in Asheville, all the way over to 88 to 90 in Raleigh. Chilly along the a little chillier. It's not really chilly, but you get that sea breeze along the west coast. And boy, I've done it again. I've put us on the wrong display. You can't see anything that I'm showing here. So anyway, this is Saturday, by the way, and so it's going to be warm in the southeast, and then Saturday night, cool again, back in the teens in the Rocky Mountains where there was snow falling. It's going to be chillier than that, and then cool along much of the northern tier outside of the southeast. 50s and 60s for lows across much of the southeast, and then your Easter Sunday temperature forecast. Warm in the southeast, again, 80s, 60s, making it all the way up in the center part of the plains up to the Canadian border. We're looking at close to 70 up here in places like Minot and Bismarck, and then cool along the Great Lakes in the northeast. So places like Syracuse, you're 50 degrees, and down into Pittsburgh, 66. Then over here in the San Joaquin Valley, again, warming up the desert southwest. So that's your temperature profile. That's your Easter weekend forecast, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful Easter weekend. And looking at the 6 to 10 day averages, warm in the along much of the country is going to be warmer than normal, especially down here in the south and southeast. And then our above normal areas are in the center part of the country for the most part, the highest probabilities anyway. And then the four corners look to be near normal, with Alaska and Hawaii much above normal in those areas. Nothing doing with volcanoes. We're still at the same four that we've been monitoring, so nothing going on there. A couple of little small earthquakes here in Nevada and down in Texas. I don't think there's been any damage reports with any of that, so nothing else going on in that area. And that's it, folks. That brings us to the answer to today's trivia question, or our weather IQ question, rather. And the question was, if you recall, it is, what is the rarest type of lightning? Cloud to ground, heat lightning, ball lightning, and sheet lightning. And the answer is ball lightning. Ball lightning is the rarest type of lightning, and as a matter of fact, it's so rare that some people doubt its existence. It's difficult to get filmed, and not a lot of people have claimed to seen it, but some people have. And there are various explanations for it. It's luminous, it's spherical, often described as floating about erratically as like a ball of light, and it varies in size from golf ball size all the way up to several meters in diameter. And it's usually seen associated with thunderstorms near kind of floating along the ground. Some people have reported to touch it and felt the buzzing, kind of a static kind of discharge. Other people have reported to have been burned by it. It's possible suggestions in terms of suggested causes include air or gas behaving abnormally in high density plasma, air vortices, even microwave radiation trapped within a plasma bubble. So there's very little understanding of it. Even some scientists think that it's a myth. So in any event, some people think it's hallucinations associated with magnetic fields. So who knows? I've never seen it, but I think it exists. It's just a very rare thing. So we'll call it the rarest form of lightning. And that's it, folks. Now you know about lightning. Now you know the weather. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other weather stations run 24/7, we got you covered. What? 4814 right here. Cold Rain's Weather World. That's it, folks. Hope you have a nice evening or a nice afternoon, whatever time of day is you're watching this. Hope it's well for you. Take care. Have a good day.